Here we go. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Service Without Excuses podcast. So glad to have you here today. We have a very, very special guest that has personally meant a lot to me. Reinforcing a lot of beliefs I was raised with, but at the same time, giving me an idea on how I can implement that. Not only I was working for somebody else, honestly, Bob, when I first started getting involved in the book. I got the book way before, and then, kind of went from there. It's a famous book. It's called The Go-Giver, and you'll see me sink my head right here. You can see the right above us. If you can see that book has sold over 1 million copies, folks. So this book is widely popular and incredibly filled with just the best information you can really do when it comes to going the extra mile. And I'm going to invite our guest right now, Mr. Bob Burg. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Rob. Thanks for having me with you.
I appreciate that very much. So, Bob, why don't you introduce a little bit, tell our listeners a little bit about you if they're not familiar. I don't know how they can't be, but let's just assume maybe they're not.
Yeah, I began in broadcasting over 40 years ago. Then I was only in it for a little while. I wasn't very good at it, got into sales and stumbled for the first few months because I had no background in sales, no formal sales training. Picked up a couple of books at a bookstore, one by Zig Ziglar, one by Tom Hopkins, two of the icons of the field, and began to learn and followed their system. And I personally define a system as the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles. The key being predictability. If it's been proven that by doing A, you'll get the desired results of B, then you know that all you need to do is A and continue to do A, and you'll get the desired results. And I found I loved sales. What I really enjoyed was the personal development aspect, learning that you had to build yourself on the inside. Success really was an inside job that manifested outwardly, but it was through all the books and the back then tapes and going to seminars and learning and applying and so forth. So I really became a sales and personal development fanatic, I guess, and eventually worked my way up to sales manager of another company and started to teach others what was working for me and yada, yada, yada. Years later, here we are.
Oh, that's awesome. You never know. You get a circle of influences in your life. You never know where they're going to be. A big one for me was Jay Abraham early on. Brilliant guy. I actually just got done watching his locked in event yesterday. With Tony Robbins and stuff, and filled with a lot of information that I can do with my service business to grow forward. But influences are influences. They're life changing. Brian Tracy was another one to me. Just brilliant individuals that always helped you get to me personally and my companies get to where they need to be. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about the story about Joe in Pindar, which is kind of, Joe is a guy that is trying to achieve and working very hard toward that goal, but just seems to fall a little bit short until he meets Pindar. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about that story as some framework or context for where we're going to go here?
Sure. So the book is a business parable. It was co-authored with John David Mann, who is really the lead writer and storyteller. He's a magnificent writer. I'm a how-to guy, which you can probably tell when speaking with me for just a few seconds. But so it was a good collaboration. And Joe is a guy who, as you said, he's an up-and-coming, ambitious, aggressive, wants to do good things, has a good heart, but his focus is really in the wrong place. It's on himself. It's on what others owe him and why he should be successful. He's really what we would call at this point, he's a go-getter, which is a good thing, okay, a person of action, but he was also kind of a go-taker. He was the kind of guy who was focused really on himself. And what he learns from Pindar and several other mentors is that shifting your focus, and this is really the key, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more pleasant way of conducting business, of a living life, it's actually the most financially profitable way as well. And not for any kind of woo-woo type of magical, mystical reasons or anything like that. It's actually quite practical. It's quite rational. When you're that person, who can take your focus off of yourself and place it on serving others, discovering what they need, what they want, what they desire. When you can move your focus off of you and move it to solving their problems and challenges, when you can move off of yourself and make it about helping to bring them closer to happiness, people feel good about you. They feel great about you. They want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in a relationship with you. They want to do business with you. They want to tell others all about you. They want to be what we call your personal walking ambassador. That's what Joe learned. And once he got that, once he understood that and could make it about others, now he was just, now he was in that position to create the benevolent context for his success.
Excellent. Excellent. What kind of advice? Obviously, a lot of our listeners here are service businesses. They could be plumbing companies, carpet cleaning companies, HVAC, a lot of interaction where, yes, there's a front line in the office, maybe as a first point of communication. Maybe it's through email, whatever. And their first real interaction with them is their technicians that might be in the home. And what are some principles that you feel companies could, implement when it comes to teaching their service techs or their staff in the office of ways to implement the go-getter system? I know there's a variety of different books. There's leadership, which is always a great one. I'm actually starting to chew into that one right now myself. But what are some real suggestions you can give to service companies where they can probably pivot? I just heard an example today of someone saying, actually my old business partner, that somebody he deals with is like really grumpy when it comes to things. Now, my suggestion to him was your buddy may not want to be the focal point of the business if he's going to be kind of gruffer on the edges. He's a Long Islander. They can be a little bit tough. I live there and I know it. But he may not be the best person to talk to the employees and motivate them and train them. So what are some of the things that they can do or implement that can be taken out of the book or any of the books for that matter?
Sure. Well, we actually dive a little deeper into that in Go Givers Sell More. That's the only book, by the way, in the series. It's not a parable. That's more like an action guide, if you will, following the Go Giver. And so within the law of value, of course, there are 5 laws in the Go Giver: the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. Now, within the law of value, there are 5 what we call elements of value. And they're important because while by the very nature of what any service business does, you're giving more in value, than what that person's paying for. This is very important. Both people the buyer and the seller both need to come away from the situation better off than they were afterwards. That person needs to, again, let's say having their carpet cleaned, right? And it means based on what they paid, they receive much more in value in terms of now their carpet is clean. Now they're healthier. Now it looks good. So they have a sense of pride, for their party that they're having, whatever, all the benefits that just come intrinsically from having their carpet done. They're receiving more than what they're paying. Meanwhile, as the service provider, you make a very healthy profit, which you should. Both parties.
I'm sorry, I got a little bit of a delay there. My apologies.
Oh, that's okay. So yes, in any market-based situation, there should always be 2 profits. The buyer comes away and the seller comes away better off than they were beforehand. Okay, we know that. And that's great that you provide that kind of value just through what you do, but it's not enough. Why? Because all your competitors can basically do the same thing. Oh, you might do it a little better than they do, but unless the prospective customer knows this, they don't know this. And unless that prospective customer can distinguish between 2 or more service providers, it's always going to come down to who has the lowest price. And unless your last name is Walmart, right, or Amazon.com, trying to make low price your unique selling proposition is not a good way to do business. It's not productive. it's not profitable, and it's certainly not sustainable. So what we need to do is be able to distinguish ourselves from our competitors. How? Well, the short answer is you've got to be that additional value, because they're buying from you before they're buying from the company. Okay. So how do you do that? Well, the good news is there are dozens, if not hundreds, of ways to communicate that additional value, but they tend to come down to five, what we call elements of value. And those elements of value are excellence, consistency, attention, empathy, and appreciation. It sounds like your buddy's friend doesn't necessarily measure up in a couple of those areas, okay? And if he's the first impression, that's not a good sign. And here's the thing: to the degree that you and everyone in your team can communicate those five elements of value at every single touch point. So from that initial contact, whether it's inbound, outbound, through a sales call, through meeting someone at a local business meeting, what a referral, whatever it happens to be. So from that initial meeting or introduction, through the relationship building process, through the follow up and the follow through, through the sales process, through the referral process, at every single touch point, to the degree that you can communicate those elements of value, that's the degree that you take both your competition and price out of the value, out of the issue. Remember, when you sell on low price, you're a commodity. When you sell on high value, you're a resource. And you only do that through, being that desired, trusted resource.
I was just thinking something you had said, and I was talking to one of my clients about this the other day, and he compared Amazon, and he's like, well, they can go to Amazon and get a lower price. And actually, it's hard to get a lower price on Amazon. It's convenient to buy on Amazon.com. Walmart's still got a lower proposition when it comes to their cost. But I explained to him, I says, Amazon obviously has a lot more buying power, a lot more variables that you don't have. But even with that, they deal with a lot of independent businesses, independent retailers, and they have a margin they have to make.
Sure.
So they can't have the margin so low that even though Amazon could cut it down, that they don't make anything when it comes to cutting it out in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to be the price leader. And here's a quick example, and I'll go back into it. I work for a national franchise chain. You know the name. I won't say it on here, but they are in the carpet cleaning business, and they're all over, and they're yellow. Leave it at that. When I started my first business in 2005, I thought I'll model what I learned there. Well, that's great when you have 5 or 8 or 10 or 15 trucks on the road doing the same thing at the same time. But when it's only you, I don't care if you're the only employee, it's you, yourself, and I, you're going to lose because you're trying to follow that formula of
Mm-hmm.
technically break even or losing money on the back end, on the front end, so they can make it on the back end. But it's a harder, you don't want to follow that model. You want to find a model that seems to work for you, that seems to be profitable for whoever you are, and whatever can help your business and yourself and your family grow. I have the Go Giver, the 5 laws of stratospheric success in front of me. And I wanted to go in a little bit of a deep dive with them real quick if we can, because they are really probably one of the cornerstones to the book. The law of value. The true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. That settles home with me, because I'd almost rather lose money to gain that client long term.
Oh, yeah, but can I?
Yes, please.
Can I interrupt you with apologies? Saying that you give more in value than you take in payment doesn't mean you lose money. No, we need to understand the difference between price and value, right? So price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount. It's finite. It is what it is. Value is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to someone that they will willingly exchange their money for it and be ecstatic that they did, while you make a very healthy profit. Now, let's take something outside the service business. Well, let's say a restaurant. which is well, it's a service, but it's a product business too. So Sam, not Sam, Ernesto Iafrate was the example we used in the story. He was the restaurant owner, right? Very pricey restaurant, swanky cafe. And if you eat at his restaurant, you're going to pay a pretty penny. But the experience that you attain from it is worth much more than what you're paying. From the way you're greeted, to the way you're seated, to the wait staff that as a team, they take such great care of you. The food is delicious. The presentation's wonderful. The ambiance is magnificent. You're treated like gold. It may cost you a couple of $100, but you come away feeling like $1,000 or $2,000, right? Of value, right? You receive much more in value than what you paid. But remember, Iafrate's cost of goods sold, keeping the restaurant open, his staff, is much less than what he's charging. So both parties profit. Okay, it's the same when again, regardless of the whatever the service industry is, whatever the service they provide, they charge $500 for it. Well, that customer, if they come away from it feeling as though they receive much more than $500 in value, that's what it's all about. While, of course, the profit was still made by the company because their cost of goods sold and running the operation is much less than $500. So we want everybody to profit. And that's why also with, most GIVER companies are higher than the average, provider, because they're not selling on price. They're selling on high, exquisite value. So yeah, we always want to make sure that when we say give more in value than you take in payment, it's being able to that there's a big difference between price that you charge and the value that you provide.
Yeah, totally understand. I guess where I was coming from was the point of sometimes breaking even or losing something on the front end to gain on the back end.
It's a strategy, and it's a legitimate strategy. That's just not what this is about.
Sure,
That's a very legitimate strategy. If that works for you, absolutely. It's like an infomercial, right? They typically break even or they lose on that the first buy, but it's the list and it's everything else that they make a great profit. It's a wonderful strategy. It's fine, but that's not what we mean by give more in value than you take in payment. We're not looking at this as as by the nature of the thing, losing money on the front end.
100%. Totally understand. Could you describe in detail some of these, the different laws? Better to hear it from you than me to repeat it. So how would you explain these in the easiest terms possible?
Yeah. So that was the law of value. The law of compensation says your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So where law number 1 says to give more in value than you take in payment, law number 2 says the more people whose lives you touch with the exceptional value you provide, the more money with which you'll be rewarded. So at Ernesto Iafrate's Cafe, it's not just providing a great experience to one diner, but to a whole bunch of them. With the service provider, it's not just that one customer, it's tons of customers. This is a big reason why we're big believers in referral business, because referrals, really good referrals, have a number of benefits, but four quick ones. One, it's simply easier to set the appointment, right? When someone is a referred prospect, you're going in on borrowed influence. Number 2, price is less of an issue. Because of that borrowed influence, borrowed trust, you're able to come in as a professional in their eyes, and it makes it easier to sell on high. That doesn't mean the price isn't an issue at all, but it means you're able to sell on value. The third is that with a referred prospect, it's easier to complete the sale based on, again, borrowed trust, or what we call vicarious experience. In other words, they may never have done business with you before, but someone who they know, like, and trust has said, this is the only company you need to deal with. This is the salesperson who's going to make sure you are taken care of. These are the people who do a wonderful job. They guarantee it, their work. They make sure that, you know what I'm saying? And that's powerful. And then the fourth benefit of a referred prospect is with a referred prospect, they're already of the mindset that that's how you do business because that's how they met you. So in their paradigm, in their model of the world, you meet your prospects through referral. You sell on high value rather than low price. You complete the transaction, and then you are referred to others, assuming you go about the process correctly.
Great,
So
great.
that's law number two. Uh, Law number three is the law of influence. And the law of influence says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interest first. Now, I want to qualify that, if I may, because it can sound a little confusing when you it can easily be misunderstood, actually. And I think this is very important. When we say place the other person's interests first, we don't mean you should be anyone's doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial in any way. Not at all. It's simply understanding, and you and I have kind of hit on this a little earlier. It's understanding, as Joe, the protege, learned from several of the mentors, the golden rule of business, of sales, is that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And I know you know this, Rob. There's no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those types of feelings toward you from others than by genuinely moving from that I focus or me focus to that other focus. Or as Sam, one of the mentors in the story, advised Joe, it's about making your win all about the other person's win. Law number four is the law of authenticity. This says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. In this part of the story, Deborah, the mentor in that part, shared a very important lesson, and that is all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they are, and they are all indeed very, very important, they're also all for naught if you don't come at it through your true, authentic core. But when you do, when you show up as yourself day after day, week after week, month after month, people feel good about you. They feel comfortable with you. They feel safe with you. That's so important when it comes to trust. And why wouldn't they feel safe? They know who they're getting. Now, with that said, let's take it a tiny bit deeper, because I think sometimes, and we see this especially online, the word authenticity is, I think, misinterpreted as being, well, just say whatever you want, do whatever you want because you're being authentic, so it's okay. Well, not necessarily. This is like the person who says, well, I have anger issues and I yell at people a lot, and if I were to act any differently, that wouldn't be authentic of me, right? And that's malarkey. That's baloney. It simply means this person has an authentic problem that they need to authentically work on in order to become a better, higher, more effective, authentic version of themselves. So we never want to use the word authenticity to kind of not grow, not stay where we are, but use it as impetus to become our highest authentic self. I have a very, and this is just me, my definition of authenticity is very simple, and that is acting congruently with your values. If you do that, you're authentic. And then, go ahead. Did you?
Oh, please, please.
Okay. And then law number 5, the law of receptivity, kind of ties it together. And that says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. This means nothing more than understanding that, yeah, you breathe out, you also have to breathe in. It's not one or the other. It's both. You breathe out carbon dioxide, you breathe in oxygen. You breathe out, which is giving, you breathe in, which is receiving. Giving and receiving are not opposite concepts, despite the immense amount of anti-prosperity messages we get from the world around us. I mean, you would think that if you're doing well, you must have done something evil or horrible or stepped on people's toes. We see this all the time. Not to mention, with many people, it's the message they have from a combination of upbringing and environment and schooling and news media and television, movies, the internet, right? And it's hurtful, because what happens is you take in these messages through all these different places and people, and it gets into your unconscious, and you really, on a on a deep level that you're not even thinking about, right? Unconscious, you kind of will sabotage all the good, right, that you can bring in, because, well, if I make too much money, it must mean I did something wrong, or people aren't going to like me, or what have you. Giving and receiving, it's not, are you a giver or a receiver? It's, you are a giver and a receiver. But here's what we know: the giving comes first. This is universal law. It's laws of nature, of human nature, but also physical nature. We plant before we harvest. We sow before we reap, right? We give before we receive. Pindar said to Joe early in the story, some people walk up to a fireplace with the attitude of, first give me some heat and some fire, then I'll throw on some logs and some paper and light a match. Right? Can you imagine going to a bank and saying, hey, I think I'm thinking of opening up an account, but first I need you to pay me some interest, and then I'll make a deposit. Life doesn't work like that. And successful people understand truths, and they work within those truths. So we need to give before we receive. You give without an attachment, without an emotional attachment to receiving, but you also know that when you plant these seeds of goodwill, when you're providing value to everyone whose lives you touch, you're creating, again, that benevolent context for your success, and business becomes a lot more fun, a lot less stressful, and certainly a lot more profitable.
I love what you just said, and it resonates. It hits, really does hit home. And as I'm thinking about this, one of the conference calls I just had, or a private client call I had the other day, everybody's talking about the doom and gloom of the economy and what's going to make us different. And ironically, yesterday I was listening to Jay and Tony, and they had a service person on there, and they were talking about they are the highest, most expensive company, and they're premier, and they get all their guys' background checks and everything. And Tony, I mean, as nice as he was, he just kind of ripped her apart with that and said, but why would they give you more money than somebody else? And a lot of the reason I'm going there is a lot of the things you're mentioning don't require a bunch of money. They require you to have a change of mindset and you being able to implement these things that you just clearly described that people can feel from. When I first started my business in New Jersey, I came from rural Pennsylvania to New York City to New Jersey. New Jersey's a little bit of both. But at the end of the day, one of the things that was lacking tremendously was a sense of customer and, should I say, client service. Putting them on a pedestal, taking care of them, doing whatever it takes times 10. And it wasn't that hard to do as long as you're doing it over and over.
Exactly.
And I think the things that you just mentioned, that you teach in your book and you teach in your sales book too as well, is that if you are willing to, and you should be willing to give and not worry about what you're going to get back at the time, the law of reciprocity alone talks about what if you do something for somebody else, it comes back. But in the sense of this, you're looking at, if you're willing to do the extra work and go the extra mile, you don't have to base anything on price. You can base it on the respect that you're going to get from your clients, the warm feeling you're going to get from your clients. And I think that will leave a much better impact, sometimes a better impact than the actual service itself, because they may say, you know what? Yeah, I thought they probably could do a little bit of, man, were they nice? And boy, did they communicate well. It's still going to give a better impact almost than the service itself. Not that the service itself is not important. It's very important. But if you make it above about the philosophies that are in your book, I think it can be life transforming. And I feel it going into 2023 in particular. I never like to date these things, but let's just say some of these guys are right. And we're going to have a little bit of a rough patch here. These are leverageable things you can do in your business to really do very well with it. Bob, I don't want to take away any more of your time. I respect it. We are almost at the 30-minute lock ourselves, and it goes very quickly. And I do try to keep it out of respect to my guests and of course, listeners, that they listen to this thing full out. How can our listeners find out more about you, sir?
Best place is just to go to Burg, BURG.com,
Okay.
and everything's there. And while they're there, they can, if they'd like, subscribe to my daily impact email that goes out 5 days a week.
Excellent. Excellent. Bob, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it. I know we had a few little technical things this morning, but you are a true champion, and we worked through it, and we got the interview in. So I am eternally grateful. Thank you very much, sir. And you enjoy your new year.
Thank you. You too.
You got it, sir. Have a good day. We're all set.
All right.
I'm going to do some editing on this and get this over, and I'll send you a link.
All right. Or just to, when you post it, when you post it on social media, whatever you do, just tag me, and I'll make sure to see it and comment.
You got it, sir. All right. I'll get it out as soon as I can.
All right, Rob. Thanks so much. I appreciate you.
You're welcome, sir. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.